Move on to the last talk before the interval, and that's going to be given by Denise Plume, formerly known as Denise Foster. She's been working with bats since 2007 and has a wealth of bat experience in the UK and abroad. For the most part, Denise has been active in Herefordshire, where she lived for 10 years. She moved to Carmarthenshire in 2018 and is now ready to put bats on the map in her home county. This has already started with the creation of the Carmarthenshire Bat Atlas, which can be downloaded from the WWBIC website. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Kate. So now this is where the fun starts, me trying to share my presentation. It went well in rehearsals, didn't it?
Yeah.
Hold on now. Hold on. Now, if I go into slideshow, you're not going to see this, are you? Speak to me.
You'll have to go on share.
New share, isn't it? That's it. I think I've got it. Right.
That's it.
You got it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I'm Denise. Well, put Foster Plume on here. I'm also known as Denise Foster or Denise Plume. I recently got married and I've kept the Foster in my name because anybody that does a search, a Google search on me for working with bats, well, it will come up, you know, Denise Foster. That's most of the work will be under that name. So that's the reason why I wanted to keep the name. I moved to Carmarthenshire in 2018. I was in Herefordshire since 2000, well, for 10 years, at 2007. I had a little bit of a break in lockdown as well. So after a couple of years, I feel now that I'm ready to get back into doing some serious bat work in my home county. So just so you don't think I'm any sort of fly by night, because not many people know me in Wales. I have done a lot of research work in Herefordshire. I'm also done barn owl work as well. I'm the chair of the barn owl group in Herefordshire still, treasurer for the Carmarthenshire Bat Group, and I've got my licenses for advanced bat work. I'd also do dormouse work as well, great crested newts, not so much of that these days. And in Wales, I've got the similar sort of licenses. So I have been around a long time. So the Atlas, the Carmarthenshire Bat Project is what I'm going to talk to you today, and that's going to start this year. And this project is going to really mirror the project that I did in Herefordshire, which is easy for me because all the templates are there, all the project plans are there. So it's just a matter of tweaking it for Carmarthenshire, and it's ready to go. I know what works and what doesn't. But the first thing that we needed to do any of this project to see where the bats are in the county was to produce the Atlas. So Steve Lucas and I joined up together as a bat team to actually put this together. Most of the template was done anyway, but it did need changing for the county. In the UK, there are 17 species of bat that breed. In Wales, there is 15, and in Carmarthenshire, there is 14. So the species that we got missing here are the Bechsteins, the Alcathoe, and the grey long-eared, which is obviously something we need to work on to see if we can get some records on there. You know, I'm always optimistic. So the Atlas that we produced, the records are for 50 years. It includes distribution maps and explanatory notes about the bats, loads of nice photos. As Kate said, it's free to download from the website, free of charge. It's a big document. It's about 45 pages with with maps of where the bats are, and it really is a valuable resource for anybody doing bat work and for any enthusiasts really wanting to do any project work on bats, because you actually can see where the species are. I would like to say that this atlas isn't a substitute for the records held by the Records Office. It's a dot on a map, and it can't be used for, by anybody, who says, oh, I'm not going to get the records because there isn't any bats in that square. This is a snapshot of what we used at the time. So I just wanted to make that pretty clear. We actually used 10,772 records at monad level, which is 1 kilometre squared. And this is just an example of one of the maps that's in the atlas. So this is our whiskered bat, the Myotis mysticrinus. The red dots actually show you the records pre-2000, and the blue dots are post-2000. And as you can see, they're widespread, but there's not many of them. Now, with the Myotis bats, they're very difficult to identify using bat detectors alone. You get a lot of bat detectors that have auto ID, you get a lot of bat workers that say they can identify them down to species. I'm always very cautious unless I've got them in the hand. And even in the hand, the small Myotis are incredibly difficult to tell apart. We have records here. I don't know, I think the majority of the records on this map are actually probably bat detector records. So they should be treated with some caution. But the work that we want to do wants to just make sure that these trends in the record office actually, you know, what we find actually matches the trends in the office, in the local records office. 45% of the bat records are actually pipistrelles as well, so 55% of them are other bats. So what we're planning to do, there's two parts to the project to actually build up the records and confirm the records at the records office. One of them we need a license for, and that is going to be for trapping for bats at various sites. Some of the sites may already have records in them, so we're confirming those records. We're going to use a mix of static bat detectors, and the bat detectors will give us a sort of a broad picture of bat activity, emergence times, so you know, if the emergence times the bats are going to be roosting nearby, and also any bats that we miss during a trapping session. And then we'll also have harp traps and mist nets and acoustic lures to bring in bat species. Some bats are easier to catch than others, and harp traps, harp trap is shown in the picture here, and actually that's what it looks like. They're just sort of vertical strings, and there's two banks of them, and the bat hits the strings, falls into the bag, and then it falls up under a polythene sheet, and you can see they just sit there in the bottom picture waiting to be collected by the bat worker. We're going to start off a little bit sort of softly because there's only two of us at the moment doing this, so you know, so we don't want to sort of spread ourselves a bit thin, and I'm still doing the same project in Herefordshire, so I'm working between two counties at the moment. The sites I'm leaving to my bat partner, Steve Lucas, because I'm new in the area. I don't know the sites, I don't know the landowners, and I'm not sure what are the prime sites to actually just, you know, for these bat species. So basically that's in his hand, but we shall be going out wrecking a few hopefully in the next month or so. And also part of the project is to ring any enthusiast pipistrelles that we catch, and these bats and any information, and this information we fed into the national project. The enthusiast pipistrelles are migrants, and they travel huge distances. So if we happen to find a bat during our trapping sessions and we stick a ring on it, and it could well end up in Latvia or the Baltic states. They travel about 2,000 kilometers, and this information is obviously a vital information to learn more about this particular species. But this is a little bit of a different sort of an add-on to our project, but our main project is to, you know, have accurate identification of species, and the trapping will obviously confirm that, and also what the bats are doing at a particular site by looking at their breeding condition and picking up, finding juveniles, etc. But the other part of the project is to cover, will be for people that don't really have an awful lot of experience about, so I want to learn a bit more about that. So no license is required. We're obviously very keen to get people on board with this and to build up our membership to help us with this project. There's three parts to this project. One is the driven transects. We've already got 2 sets of kit ready to go when the season starts. Part of also of that, anybody who does a driven transect can also do garden surveys. So when they've done their driving for a few kilometres around the countryside, they can come back and put their bat detector in the garden. And they're so important, garden surveys, because it's been amazing in Herefordshire how many species, rare species, that have been actually recorded in people's back gardens. And also they're secure. So, you know, the bat detectors that we're providing on these transects are about 1,500 quid each. So we don't want any bat detectors sort of put in a place where they're likely to get stolen. And obviously back gardens is going to be secure as far as we're concerned. And obviously the transects will be as well, because they'll just be in somebody's car for a short period of time. Church surveys we've added on to that. So if people do want to go and survey their own churches, we will be having cheaper bat detectors we could put in the churchyards, which they need to be put on order once the funding comes through. So just to sort of show you what can be done, and this is obviously the aim for the project. As I said, it mirrors what I've done in Herefordshire. So in Herefordshire, the project's been running. Obviously, we lost a couple of years with lockdown, so this is only 6 years of sort of data. It hasn't really improved much since then, apart from last year we got going again. But in Herefordshire, we're on the 2nd edition of the Bat Atlas. The project plan is identical to what I'm going to be using in this county. We only had a very small group of volunteers helping us there, even though there was 90 people in the group. Only between 2 and 6 active people ever came out with us, and it's always the same core, hardcore of people that come out with us. Most of the time, it was only 2 of us doing it, and we did achieve a lot, just the 2 of us. We started off with the records office, with the Herefordshire Records Office, with just under 14,000 records. Now, with Herefordshire Records Office, a lot of their records are extracted from planning applications by volunteers. So there's huge areas of records that were missing in prime habitats, such as woodlands and water bodies, lakes, etc. So most of the records were sort of around development sites. So, you know, we had a good reason actually to fill those gaps in, which was going to be quite easy for us to do, which we started various projects to fill in those gaps. So in 6 years, the records in Herefordshire is now up to 25,000. And 20% of those records actually were generated from the survey work. And the yellow dots on this map is the records that we actually generated through the different projects, and the blue ones underneath are the records from the records office. So some we've actually just confirmed, but we did cover quite a lot, but there's still a lot to do. But you're never going to complete every single square, not when there's only 2 to 4 people doing this particular role. So these were the sort of projects that we did. Now, what I really wanted to highlight here is the importance of the driven transects, because what these are the actual numbers of records here, and this is the number of surveys. So if you look at this bright orange section here, that's 35 driven transects we managed to do, and we actually generated nearly over 2,500 records. So, you know, quite a big return for a little effort, to be honest. 35 sounds a lot, but when there's, if we get a few people doing this, and I suppose I must have done about 4 or 5. My other battery partner in Herefordshire did about the same, and then we had a few other people. Sometimes we put the bat detector in on the way back from the trapping session, so it all, on the way home. So we were collecting records that way just to build it up. The garden surveys here, we've got 27 people to actually, or 27 garden surveys were done. Some of them were done in the same gardens. Some people have big gardens as well. And we ended up collecting 151 records. So, the garden surveys and the driven transects, a big chunk of records were generated, which I'm hoping we could do that here. Now, with regards to the trapping projects that we do in Herefordshire, the Woodland Bat Project and this Herefordshire Bat Atlas, I've called it there, it's actually a non-woodland bat project, really. So these two really are pretty much the same. They're just trapping at prime locations. So when you look here, we did 94 surveys here in total, combining the two. And, you know, we've got over 1,300 records here generated. So another big earner, really, when it comes to those. And then all these other projects that we got involved in. Obviously, the churches was, you know, the aims and objectives was completely different. But everything still feeds into the atlas at the end of the day, all channels through. So how we actually generated all these projects and how we set them up, we actually wrote a paper on that, and that can, if anybody's interested, that can be found in the British Island Bats Journal that the Bat Conservation Trust host in volume 2, if people want to see that. It's a long read, mind you, it's about 26 pages long. But the achievements for that particular project, and is the barbastelle records we managed to get. There was barbastelles in more or less every wood that we went into, and 50% of the non-woodland habitats as well. So really under-recorded in the county in Herefordshire. But there's no big surprise really, because most of the records in Herefordshire were, you know, around development sites. So there was huge gaps in these areas. Bechstein's, one of Britain's rarest bats, was discovered at 6 new locations, so definitely under-recorded, but still the rare fragile species, and at the edge of its range as well, in this part in Herefordshire, even though it has been recorded in Monmouthshire as well, which isn't that far away from Herefordshire. And we also found that the trends of the bat records and the patterns of it followed the patterns that we were getting on the records. So, you know, overall, we felt that the quality of the records at the HBRC were good, really good records, with the exceptions of barbastelle, which I've already explained, under-recorded. Bechstein's, really difficult bat to detect unless you catch it. The other two species that have quite a widespread records, not huge numbers, but there's quite a few records, your dots on the map in Herefordshire. I'm very cautious about the big bats unless I catch them. In all the 94 surveys that we were trapping bats, I only ever caught one liceless bat. So all the other records of liseless that are in Herefordshire, I'm not sure about really. I would have to say that I'd need to see one in the hand before I'd actually class that as a true record. Serotine and Herefordshire is pretty much the same. They only turn up around railway tunnels at certain times a year, and also around cave areas or woodlands where caves are. So again, when you look at the records in Herefordshire of the serotine bat, another big bat, there's quite more records than I'm just thinking, oh, I don't know, I'm not so sure really. So I'm always very cautious about some of the records that we're seeing. And obviously the work that we've done in Herefordshire, which I'm going to be mirroring here, will actually flush those sort of things out, and that's what we're hoping to do. And with that, very short, I hope, because I know that we're running over time. Anybody that wants to get involved with the project, to contact the group. Our website details and our contact details are on the website of WWBIC, so you can contact us in that way. And yeah, it was only at 10 minutes, so I think I'm hopefully on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.